The Nassau Institute proudly presents its inaugural Economics of Liberty lecture series. The lectures were conducted May 2nd and 3rd, 2011 in Nassau, Bahamas by Dr. Richard Ebeling, Professor of Economics at Northwood University in Midland, Michigan, USA. The Nassau Institute is grateful for Dr. Ebeling's dedication and assistance and great teaching ability. A special thank you is extended to the Templeton Foundations for their generous support, without which this event would not have been possible. We also thank the College of the Bahamas and Professor Randy Forbes for hosting this student lecture series in the new Harry C. Moore Library auditorium. Please enjoy Professor Ebeling as he discusses the economics of liberty.
This last session, as it says on the program, is called Public Choice, Economic Logic and the Limits of the Political Process. Another way of thinking about public choice is the economics of the political process. For most of modern history, over let's say 2 or 3 years, the presumption was that if there was a social problem, an economic problem, that seemed to exist, well, you turn to the government to solve it. Oh, have the government regulate it. Oh, have the government do this, do that. And there were 2 presumptions in this. Presumption 1 is that those in government had the wisdom, knowledge, and ability to correct the supposed social problem. In other words, by intervening or regulating or controlling, they would make it better, not worse. The other assumption that was built into this is that those who would be responsible for the setting and the implementation of any government policy would do so only and solely on the basis of some conception of the general welfare and the public good, and that they would have no self-interested motive in the outcome or the process. So in other words, policy makers and policy implementers would be viewed as sort of only altruists who have no self-interest on their part. Now, these 2 assumptions were challenged. The first one, do the planners, the regulators, the controllers, the interveners, do they have the knowledge, wisdom, and ability to successfully do this? Arguments like I was explaining in the second lecture about competition and prices, that assumption was challenged by that economist Friedrich Hayek, when he said, you know, knowledge is divided in society. Knowledge is imperfect in society. And on what basis can we presume that ordinary people like you and me have the knowledge, wisdom, and ability to know how to successfully plan, regulate, or fix the overall problems of the society? Do they not have limited knowledge like you and me? Do they not have imperfect knowledge like you and me? Is their vision and understanding of things limited just like you and me? And the answer must be yes. You know, the way I like to think of it is you know, I always use the American examples, but I imagine some government regulator in a regulatory agency in Washington, D.C., sitting at his desk and the phone rings. And he picks up the phone and it's his wife. And the wife is saying, "You forgot to stop by and get the cleaning from the store. You better not forget it today. And you know, Johnny has to be picked up from school. You better get him after soccer. Last week you forgot to get Johnny." Okay, now this guy who can't remember to get the dry cleaning and who is absent-minded in getting Johnny from his soccer practice, this is the guy who supposedly, as a head of a regulatory agency, has the wisdom, knowledge, and ability to tell us how to manage our social and economic affairs? Give me a break! When he can handle his dry cleaning, I'll have confidence. But you see what I'm saying? They're just like you and me. You know, oh, look like government with the regulator, the intervener. You know, he's just a person. So the idea that they necessarily inherently have the knowledge, wisdom, ability to plan, regulate, correct, is assuming that somehow they're like gods on Mount Olympus. They're just ordinary people. So that's the first doubt. Can we presume that those who are the individuals in government have that knowledge and ability to supposedly solve social problems? And if we recognize them as mere mortals, just like the rest of us, as the phrase goes, gets up every morning and puts on their pants one leg at a time, it's unlikely that we can presume that they'll know what to do or be able to get it right. Now with the public choice approach, this is an approach developed beginning in the 1950s and 60s by that economist that I mentioned earlier, named James Buchanan, not only by him, but he's one of the most famous ones, James M. Buchanan. He won the Nobel Prize in 1986, the Nobel Prize in economics in 1986. He and a group of other economists started developing this public choice approach. They argued is that we should look upon the political process with the same assumptions that we look upon the economic or market process. Now, you've all taken some microeconomics, price theory, and so what do we usually assume about the people in the marketplace? We assume that they're self-interested. Now, I don't know how you were taught, I know it's sometimes a misconception. When economists, since the time of Adam Smith 250 years ago, when economists use the term self-interest, they do not mean narrow-minded, materialistic selfishness. They have never meant that. It is an unwarranted and false caricature. From the time of Adam Smith, all that economists meant by self-interest is that whatever the individual considers important and valuable to him, whatever the individual considers valuable and important to him. Valuable and important can include your family, your friends, even some social issue, okay? But whatever the individual considers important and of value to him, that's all that is meant by self-interest. We do that in society, right? What's in my self-interest? Not only spending your money on things, but visiting your Aunt Matilda who's sick because you like your Aunt Matilda. That costs time. You could do other things with, but you care about your Aunt Matilda. So but we assume that individuals act on the basis of what they consider to be important and of value, what is important and valuable to them, their self-interest. Okay? What else do we assume? We assume that individuals make trade-offs, that they weigh alternatives, they compare the costs with the benefits, and they choose that which they believe, all things considered, will make them better off rather than worse off. You do that in shopping, in your social associations with people, in your pursuit of an education and everything else. Okay? And that people look for potentially mutual gains from trade. We assume that as well. That if I can't produce something myself and the other person has it, and I could get it from him better or cheaper than either producing myself or doing without it at all, better I enter into an exchange and get it from him and give him something that I have that I don't care as much about. Those are the fundamental assumptions, that we follow our self-interest, that we weigh the alternatives in terms of costs, benefits, and trade-offs, and that we look for mutual gains from trade, that will offer us profitable opportunities to improve our circumstances. Now, what the public choice theorists, such as Buchanan and others, said, let's assume that those in government are not like, gods on Mount Olympus, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good. Let's assume that they're like you and me. And what is you and me? That means that they're guided by the same motives and circumstances and searchings as you and me in life in general and the marketplace in particular. So then we can start, what do politicians want? What do politicians want? They want to be elected or re-elected. Well, what do you need to be elected? You need campaign contributions and you need votes on election day. But how do you get people to give you campaign contributions and votes on election day? In other words, what can you sell them? And you know what the bottom line is? What politicians sell? Other people's money. That's what they sell. They sell other people's money. Vote for me, and I will give you a farm support, income support. Vote for me, and I'll give you a tariff to keep out some unwanted good that you don't want to compete against. Vote for me, and I'll take money from Peter, and I'll redistribute it to you, Paul. Right? Other people's money. Other people's money, clearly, if you take from Peter to give to Paul. But other people's money, if you set up a tariff to keep a foreign good out that makes it more expensive to import, well, that means that consumers will end up paying a higher price than otherwise would have been the case if the foreign competitor could not have been kept out. And that means there's less money in your pocket after buying the product than otherwise, so the domestic producer can get a higher price than he would have been able to get if he had had to face fair and square his foreign rival. Well, the income has been distributed from the consumer to that seller because of the import price, the import tax. Okay, that's other people's money. That's what politicians are offering. That is the essence